Hi everybody, Armored Pants here. Welcome back on channel. And today I have a video for you which is quite unique and something original and something you haven't seen before, because we are going to discuss for the first time ever these spotting and scouting indices or indexes, which I have recently just created. And let me give you the background for that. Before Christmas, and I'm going to put a link into the description, I did a video saying that, one of the things which is really lacking at the moment in Blitz is players playing light tanks and medium tanks actually spotting and scouting. And if you're playing a heavy or a TD, if your teammates are not spotting and scouting for you, it's almost impossible to have a good game. Not entirely impossible, but almost impossible. It's very difficult, right? You need somebody to spot up those targets for you, right? It's the way the game works, right? Every piece has a different characteristic, a different strength. And we need the light tanks, the fast moving tanks, to do the spotting and scouting and light up those targets for us. After I did that video, a lot of people were saying, well, Armored, I've been trying and I'm getting hammered, I'm dying very early. Can you give a few tips on spotting and scouting? Which I did in the video, and as I said, link is in the description. But then I was thinking about it, guys, I did the mobility index, I did the gun handling index. Could I perhaps create a scouting spotting index that would give a single figure that we could calculate that would tell you how good a tank is at spotting and scouting? So I worked on it for a long time, messed around with figures a lot, and I finally have the answer for you guys, and I have how to calculate it. And also then once you have calculated, how to utilize it, right? So what I decided to do is, let's take tier 8 just as an example, but this will apply across all tiers. The formula is the same. And what we want to do is we want to calculate what we call a scouting index and then what we call a spotting index. So basically it's a single figure that's going to allow you to directly compare tanks and tell you how good your tank is at spotting or scouting, and basically doing these very, very important roles in Blitz. So what I was thinking about was, okay, what are the key things we need to consider here, right? So firstly, it's the view range. Secondly, it's the view range of the best tank in that tier. So the view range, let's say tier 8, we're talking about the view range of the RU-251, just 302 meters, because you have to think about the tanks that are going to try to spot you up as well, right? And then it's concealment numbers, right? So how concealed are you vis-a-vis this best view range, right? Because that's going to determine how good a scout you are. So what we do is, we now have a formula where what we do is we take your concealment numbers at the best view range within your tier. So in the example of tier 8, it's your concealment numbers in a particular tank at 302 meters, which is the view range of the RU-251. Then we divide your concealment numbers by that maximum view range, and that gives us a figure which is obviously less than 1. And the lower it is, the better. So if it's 0.9, it's okay, but 0.8 is better, 0.7 is better, because obviously if it's 1, it means you're spotted up immediately, right? So therefore, the lower it is from 1, the better, right? Don't need to worry about all of that. All you need to do is see how we calculate it and then see what it is if it's lower than another tank. That's it, right? So it's simple. So let's take the RU-251 as an example, right? So the RU-251 has a view range of 302 meters, and that's the best in its tier. At a view range of 302 meters, the RU-251 is concealed to 217.6 meters. Now, we also want to take into account the fact that light tanks have the same camo numbers, concealment numbers, when they're moving as they are when they're still. Because when you're spotting, you're going to be moving, and sometimes you're going to be still. So we need to take into account both. So what we need to do is take into account your concealment numbers when you're still and your concealment numbers when you're moving. And then we take the average. Now for a light tank, that's going to be the same because they're the same figures. But for a medium tank, it's going to be different because the medium tank doesn't have the same camo numbers when it's moving. Therefore, we're automatically adding in the benefit or the advantage that a light tank has, right? So it's going to be built into the formula, right? Makes sense. So therefore, it's 217.6 multiplied by 2 divided by 2, so it's 217.6, right? Whereas you can see as a medium tank, and we're going to have a look at the Pantera P44 as an example later, the medium tank loses out in this, right? So if you do that calculation, Basically, it's 217.6 divided by 302. It works out at 0.72. So the scouting index of the RU251 is 0.72. But here's the rub, right? When you're scouting, you also need to be moving. So therefore, your ability to scout also depends on your ability to move around the map and how fast you are and how good you are, how maneuverable you are. So therefore, we're going to take the mobility index and add that somehow to the scouting index to get a spotting index, right? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to make two calculations. Now the mobility index, as we know, is basically we take its top speed multiplied by power to weight ratio multiplied by the square root of traverse speed, right? It's all in another video. I'll put a link in here. Anyway, you don't need to worry about that either. Just put in the figures, calculate it, and it's all available on blitzhanger.com, as you can see we're looking at here. All those figures are available on Blitzhanger, right? So all you need to do is put them into the formula. So the mobility index of the RU251 is 22.4, right? It's one of the best in Blitz, right? Because the tank is a flying machine. So what you want to do then is you want to somehow combine these. So you're probably thinking, okay, we multiply it. No, you don't multiply it. What you do is you divide it, because remember, the lower the scouting index or spotting index is, the better. So therefore you divide 22.4 by 0.72 and you get a 31.1. So 31.11 is basically your scouting index for the RU251, right? Now, if we do the same thing for the FV301, which is another light tank at tier 8, its stats are basically, its concealment number is 218 at 302 meters. Basically, that gives you a spotting index of 0.721, so slightly worse than the RU251. Divide that by its mobility index, which I've already calculated for you, which is 17.15, and that gives you a spotting index of 23.8, so almost 24. So you can see it's good, but it's not as good as the RU251. Now, if we take the Pantera, because we want to calculate what it is for a medium tank, and we know the Pantera is a very, very good view range. It's also very, very mobile, tier 8 medium tank. Basically, we take its concealment numbers, but bear in mind, we need to add the two of them together and divide by 2, because its concealment numbers are different when it's moving compared to when it's still, because it's a medium tank. It doesn't have that moving bonus that the light tanks have. So basically, the Pantera is going to be 236, which is concealment numbers at 302 meters when it's still, plus 250.6 is when it's moving, divided by 2 is going to give you 243 average divided by 302. So it has a scouting index of 0.8. So we can see it is inferior to the RU251 and inferior to the FV301, which is what you expect because it's a medium tank, right? But now to get its scouting index, we multiply it by its mobility index. Sorry, we divide its mobility index by 0.8. Its mobility index is 14.3. Divide that by, it's 11.5. Divide that by 0.8. It gives us 14.3 scouting index. So basically, we see that the RU251 is twice as good as it, but 14.3 is pretty good for a medium tank. So what does all this tell us? Well, basically it tells us that we can use a single figure to calculate how good a tank is at scouting and spotting vis-a-vis its competitors and vis-a-vis tanks it's going to go up against. So like the gun index and like the mobility index, we have a single figure that allows us to compare on a like-for-like basis tanks. And therefore tell us before we start gaming, before we start battling in these tanks, exactly how good they are and whether or not they're going to do the job for us and whether or not they're better than another tank. And as we calculate these for different tanks, then of course we will know when we're playing against those other tanks, whether or not we have an advantage or not. So if you are in the Pantera and you've already calculated your RU251 figures, you're going to know that you need to be quite careful when you're scouting because your RU251 is going to be a better scout and better at spotting and spot you up earlier than you're going to spot him. And therefore you need to be very aware when you're scouting, you need to be much more careful. If you're an RU251 or an FV301, you know that you have a significant advantage over most of their tanks. And unless there's another one of those tanks on the red team, you have a great advantage and you can kind of scout and spot with impunity. So Those figures are great, right? Figures, but they're only tools, right? They only give us indications of what to do. Now we're going to have a look at some gameplay. We're going to pick the FV301, and we're going to have a look at some gameplay of the FV301 and how we are going to utilize the spotting and scouting indexes, plus also its mobility index, to execute a mastery game. And I'm going to talk you through how we utilize those figures from the game kickoff through to the game end, and how we basically maximize performance by utilizing these indices, which are just tools, but we utilize them and enable us to have a better game and to deliver a mastery game. So as we look at the gameplay here, basically we're counting down as we're awaiting players. What we're going to do is we're going to check the setup before we get into countdown. The countdown has started, right? So what we're going to do is, right, we've looked at the red team. We know we have a significant spotting and scouting advantage over the enemy team. So we're going to pump our way towards B so that we can scout at B and basically see if we can spot up the enemy, right? There's a Progetto 46 in their team. It has a decent view range, a decent scout, but of course it is not a light tank. It doesn't have the same advantage. So we've spotted up, fluff a shot at him, but it doesn't matter. Our job is to spot it up. We have another spot here. We got the IS-3 Bear spotted up. All of this is being relayed to our teams. Now we have the Emil spotted up. Now we have the Tiger 2. So we have basically utilized our spotting and scouting index. We know we have an advantage, went to B, and we spotted up the red. So we've done a job for our team. Now we see the LTTB here is trying to flank us. We know we have a significant mobility advantage over him, not because he's not a light tank, he is, but because we're a tier higher, so we have a better power to weight ratio, we have a better mobility index, we have a better rate of fire, we have a better gun system, and you can see we've cleared him off. Now, we are at the back of the map. We are not utilizing our camo numbers, nor are we utilizing our spotting, scouting index, or our mobility index. So put the pedal to the metal, we're going to go towards C. We know with the LTTB isolated and now removed, the best scouting and spotting vehicle in their team is the T-71. He's unseen. I know that I have a scouting and spotting index advantage over him. So with impunity, I can move with great alacrity to C, and now I'm capping C. As I'm capping C, ping, I see the T-71. I spot him before he spots me, and I'm able to move in now and take him on. I'm going to utilize a combination of AP and HE rounds because I want to take him out as quickly as possible. Put a HE round to him right up the ass. Nice Freddie Mercury round there. Right up to Jaxer. Vindaloo round. He's not a happy customer. I'm going to take a little bit of punishment here, but I don't mind because once I remove him, and bear in mind, he is the best scout and spotting vehicle as the light tank in terms of indices on the red team. Basically, what does that mean? And this is where thinking comes into and utilizing your knowledge of the game and those scouting and spotting indices which you just calculated. We know now the map is ours. We are going to spot up everything left on the red team before they spot us. So we can move around the map with impunity and with alacrity and basically take out tanks like we're doing here with the T-28 Proto. Once you get close up to him, you know, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. You're always going to be the winner, right? His traverse speed, his frontal armor, his gun handling, none of that is going to help when you get into him close up with a tank like the FE301 with that mobility index that we've just calculated. You know that you can basically take him out. Now we need to go and help our friends. We got a call to arms and we've replied yes. And this is where your mobility index comes into play. So we know that we can get from point A to point B, or in this case, to Tiger 2, pretty damn quick, faster than anything else on the map. And we know then we can influence the game. Now, we couldn't get there quicker than it took the Tiger 2 to take out the IS-6. But now we're here. Now we're using this mobility index, right? So we are utilizing our mobility index, our rate of fire, and this Tiger 2 hasn't a hope. he can still fight. He can still try to get a few shots on us. As I try to track him, I fluff tracking him a couple of times here. Eventually I get him when it really counts. The problem with when you're in a circle of death, and I track him here just at the right time. Tiger and Tiger 2 have amazing traverse speed. They have medium tank traverse speed, which makes them such efficient brawlers. But now it's game over, right? Again, I spotted up the IS-3 before he could get a shot onto me. I saw him miss me. And even though he's able to get a shot into me, it's game over because I have much faster rate of fire. And because I conserved my hit points, I was able to take that shot from him. Even though he did quite a good job of blocking my circle of death on him. So there we go, almost 4.5k of damage with a tier 8 light tank is pretty impressive. That would be impressive even with a tier 10 light or medium tank. You can see a bit of a carry. Myself on the rim did basically almost all the damage on our team. But what's really important and what's really good to note about this game is understanding the spotting and the scouting indexes, calculating them, knowing that you have an advantage with those. Then, not just knowing that, but putting that into practice within the game. So going towards B, using your better scouting and spotting indices, which you have mathematically counted. It's not an opinion, it's fact. Spotting up the reds, relaying that information to your team. Then utilizing your mobility and your scouting and spotting indexes to capture C. Then knowing that once you remove the T71 and the LTTB is already gone, that the map is yours, you're going to spot up everybody and see everybody before they can get near to you. Massive advantage for you. Even though this seemed like a close game, once you are thinking and that you know that you have these advantages, it gives you a sense of confidence that the game is yours. So even though that game was quite close and it came down to a 1v1 situation in the end, it wasn't really close because you know the mobility, spotting and scouting indexes of your tank. You know that you have a significant advantage, and then it only remains for you to execute that. Execution, of course, is really important, but execution without knowledge is much more difficult. As Littlefinger says, and it's the motto for his channel, knowledge is power. And basically calculating your gun index, calculating your mobility index, and now as we have a look here, your spotting and scouting indices gives you that knowledge, that sense of power, and enables you to deliver games like this. As I've said to you before, guys, I used to be a terrible Blitz player. I had a win rate of 38%. So I am not a naturally gifted player. But basically by studying the mathematics and the dynamics and the algorithms within the game that make it so complex, I was able to become a better player. And the good news about that is that there's nothing that I do, there's no gameplay that I ever execute that you guys can't do. Whether or not you're as good a player as me now is irrelevant. There is no reason you cannot become as good a player as I am, or maybe even better, by utilizing the hard work and knowledge which I've gained over the years and which I'm sharing with you now. May seem like a lot of work, and yet it's not for everybody, which is why not everybody is going to develop as a good player. But there's nothing in this video that you can't calculate. There's nothing in this video that you can't execute. There's nothing in this video that you can't do. And I hope that that gives you a sense of confidence, a sense of purpose, and allows you to become better players. So guys, I hope you found this video useful. I hope you found it enjoyable. I hope that you'll start to use the spotting and scouting indices and that it makes sense to you. And now I guess all that remains for me to say is, as always, cheers Mush and pants off.